The SMG-72 Pummeler is considered the best weapon in the Helldivers 2 Polar Patriots Warbond, but that might not be saying too much, as the Warbond itself has been widely criticized for being a bit half-baked and containing worse versions of guns that already exist. But that actually is not the case for the SMG-72 Pummeler. In fact, I think this one is stronger than most people think. Dr. Pooplove here, and let's discuss. Now, as usual, we are going to be starting off with the bugs for this, and there actually is a lot to cover for this faction. But first, let's take a look at the stats. The Pummeler has a lower damage with a high fire rate. It has a low recoil with a decent sized capacity, and it has great handling, which all comes together for a gun which just has a nice feeling to use. This gun may often be most compared to the SMG-37 Defender, as it does share a similar design with a similar capacity and recoil, but the Pummeler has a lower damage and lower fire rate. And this trade-off is offset by the Pummeler's immense concussive trait, or basically its ability to stagger enemies and keep them at bay. And for this reason, I think this gun is actually more comparable to the AR-23C Liberator Concussive, which also has the ability to stagger as its main feature. But in this case, although having the same damage, the Pummeler has a better capacity, a better recoil, and a better fire rate. And while this likely kind of makes the concussive Liberator useless now, there is one key advantage that the concussive does have over the Pummeler, and we'll talk about that. Now, rounding it off, the Pummeler can be modded. However, I see no reason to switch this away from full auto. The gun is light armor penetrating, and it is one-handed, which will come in handy, literally, versus the bugs. Speaking of which, how does it do against these pests? Well, pretty damn good. Starting with the little guys, this takes them out nicely with one headshot or two body shots, which isn't bad for an automatic weapon. Versus the hunters, I am very happy with this performance. Not only is it just a couple of shots to take them out, but when you do hit them with even one bullet, you immediately start stunning them and knocking them off their hunter tracks. And it just makes them easier to finish them off and keep them off of you. This also feels great against the warriors, killing them quickly but also staggering them back as they try to advance. For the hive guards, this will not penetrate their medium armor, but one bullet through the cracks gets them stunned and they start to kind of open up, giving you much more room to dish out damage. And versus the brood commanders, this is great. As they charge you, your stunning bullets can keep them totally at bay. One thing to mention though here is that, as mentioned earlier, I think that the Liberator Concussive is actually a little bit better for the brood commanders, at least in terms of the amount of stagger that it provides, because one single bullet from the concussive will start to stagger them, whereas with the Pummeler you will need to get a few bullets in before that stagger starts to take effect. This is a slight disadvantage, as it is nice to know consistently that every bullet will keep an enemy back, but once you get used to it with the Pummeler, it's really not that bad. You just need to get a couple extra bullets in them to do essentially the exact same thing. I will say it's not just the brood commanders though. Other medium-sized enemies in both factions kind of have this thing. Now moving on to the Stalker, and this is great at keeping those invisible bastards away from you. The key though is finding them first. Now Shriekers is where I'm not a huge fan of this gun. These guys are tough to get all around, but you can't really stun them to prevent their swooping in on you, so you just really have to shoot them and kill them with enough bullets. Going for the joint between their body and their wing seemed to be the most effective here. Okay, now for the spewers, I love this. These guys get stunned and they're just rendered completely still. They don't spew at you, and actually probably the bad thing about this is they actually look dead. So sometimes I have thought they were dead because they just sit there doing nothing. But don't be fooled. Keep your eye on them, because once you're done stunning them, some of them may wake back up. You will need roughly a clip and a half for these guys. Nursing spewers you can get basically anywhere, but bile spewers you will need to go for their sacks because of their medium armor. But either one will be impacted by these stuns. Now for perhaps the most impressive aspect of this gun, and that is the charger. And this honestly just shocked me. When you shoot them in the butt, they basically just sit there the whole time, and they allow you to pour your entire clip into them. And if you do this one more time, they're gone. These guys are down in 2 clips with this weapon, and it's honestly a very easy charger takedown. Now, obviously, this isn't the fastest, but this is very good for a primary. And if you are playing with others, what you can do is you can stun the charger and hold them in place, letting your teammate just have their way with him. I never thought I would say this, but I just love pummeling the chargers. Now with the Bile Titans, I'm not really going to recommend this, but you can get the sacks, and after Rail Cannon Strike strips their top armor, you can finish them off with this thing. But I just don't really enjoy pummeling the Titans. Now, here are a few tips to make the most of this bad boy versus the bugs. For one, this gun should largely be looked at as basically a horde management gun. This gun doesn't really kill things that fast, but the stagger gives you great control over the horde and can not only help keep them away from you nicely so that you are nice and secure and healthy, but you can also use that to manage the crowd. Essentially, you can corral them all together in a group and even hold them in place long enough to follow up with some sort of chaff clearing stratagem or a bomb. This actually pairs very nicely with the impact incendiary found in this Warbond. You can group them up together, throw that incendiary in there, and ultimately get more enemies because of this. The other thing that the Pummeler is great at is taking advantage of the one-handed perk's ability to shoot backwards in any direction really while you are running. As most guns force you to stop or slow down as you hip fire, this gun lets you just keep moving. So as you may be running away from the horde, this gun can actually fire at those enemies that are getting too close to keep them away from you while also letting you to continue moving at the same speed. This is also good for stamina management, as when you do run out of stamina, you can stop and largely just keep enemies off of you with the stagger effect and allow your bar to recharge again to continue to take off. Honestly, I do think this gun is pretty great to take on the battlefield versus the bugs. It offers a good use case for dealing with the horde while also being pretty effective at controlling all enemies up to even the charger. It does make me wonder about the Liberator Concussive, which maybe is having an existential crisis at this point, because I don't know whether it would ever be worth picking that up again when the Pummeler exists. But what do you think about all this? Let me know in the comments, and thank you to my YouTube members for joining the Bowel Movement. But otherwise, so long, Pooper Troopers.